Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Life Lessons Learned. Have you ever had a cop unexpectedly pull his weapon out on you during a routine traffic stop? Now, I'm not talking about the Bonnie and Clydes out there that are sending police on a wild goose chase while they're speeding through traffic or throwing drugs out the window, okay? I'm talking about someone who never had a speeding ticket, someone who's never been arrested, never had a DUI. Never, never, never. My record was as clean as this tea, okay? Without a blemish. So let's get into this story. And I know there's going to be lots of opinions and perspectives. And this one, you'll hear mine. So on my way to work, and let me put everything in the right context. I had just purchased a brand new car. And if you watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that I've always had personalized plates. I mean, that's just what I do. And so I had a new car. I'm on my way to work, and there was a police car that got behind me. Now, I'm not thinking anything of it because, again, I'm not speeding. I'm using my signals. I'm a good driver. So when he flashed his lights, my thing was to pull over so he could race on and get the person he's after. I didn't know he wouldn't be racing on. Okay. So I pull over and he pulled over. My nerdy butt was like, wait, what? So of course he comes over to, the driver's side and he asks me to show my license and registration. And you know how some people say, What's the reason why you pulled me over, officer?" Well, I didn't think to ask that because I'm thinking, well, there wouldn't be a reason. I mean, I hadn't done anything. So I'm still in not knowing what's going on here. So of course I give him my driver's license. And I do say to him, I've got to reach into the glove box to get, the registration. He said, that's fine. And so I did that. And he takes a look at it, both of them. And then he says, I'll be right back. You know how they do. They go back to their patrol car and they look up your information and that kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, no big deal. But I'm still wondering why was I pulled over? Because again, I didn't know this at this point, why he had did that. He comes back to the vehicle and he does not have my license or my registration in his hand. He has his weapon drawn, okay, like that. And he's like, get out of the car right now. So I'm thinking, okay, what the hell what the hell the information did he get? I mean, there's nothing on me. I don't have a record. But I'm confused as hell. Cars are still going down the street and looking at this officer pulling a gun on me. And I'm like, really? Is this how this works? So, of course, I comply and I, slowly open up my door and get out. And, um, well, I shouldn't say, because a lot of people wouldn't know. But it really was like in the movies. He was like, now turn around and lean against the car. And I'm like, okay. So I did that, and you know how they kick your legs a little open, and then he said, "Now put your hands behind your back." Now at this point, I'm like, "Officer, what's going on? That there has to be some mistake," which I'm sure every criminal says, "No, man, that was my brother. No, man, you're talking about my cuz." But I was like, I don't even have nobody to tell you could be thinking of because I don't know that element of people. So I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? So he handcuffs me, tells me that I'm going down to the station and that in order for him to do that, because I lived in one township and I worked in another, so I was on my way to work and I was close to my work, so I was in the township that's different from where I live. So he said he had jurisdiction over the township that he stopped me at, but he would have to stop at the uh, location point at the other township where I was wanted, where they had a warrant out for me, and they would have to exchange the prisoner, which prisoner being me. So he drove to the other township, and then we had to sit and wait for that township's police people to come. And they came, and this time, and this police officer was by himself, so it was a one male by himself. But when they sent the other dispatch out, meet us at the other township, they had a female and a male officer. So they had the female officer, kind of pat me down, and they took the handcuffs off me from his jurisdiction, and they had to put the ones on me from theirs. Okay, so this thing is getting like really wild, and I'm like, you guys, what's going on? So they said you'll find out everything once we get to the station. We're going to fingerprint you and book you, and I'm like, okay. So we get to police station, and I'm still going, hell happened? And the police officers said, well, first of all, he asked me whose car I was driving. And I'm thinking, whose car? I gave you my license and my registration. It's my car. So he said, ma'am, that plate doesn't match your car. And I was like, oh, wait. Yep, I got a new car. I switched my plates before I went to the registration office because hear me out. I was so excited about getting my new car and putting my plate on it that I switched my place, and I was going to go to registration like on my lunch hour or something. I was thinking, a big deal. Famous last words, right? So I said, if the officer had asked me that, I would have told him that. I said, I'd switched the plates on there. And then this other officer who I'd never even seen before comes out of a room and he goes, so that explains the plate, but what about the attempted murder? Okay, now at this point, I'm thinking, you better be kidding me at this point. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I didn't say it that way. I was like, what? And they were like, don't try to act like you don't know what we're talking about. There's 3 warrants out for your arrest. You've been eluding the police. I was like, no, I haven't. I was on my way to work. So how would I have been eluding police? Wouldn't you have known where I worked at? Anyway, so they fingerprint me. At this time, I'm like, you really are in the twilight zone. Something's definitely wrong here. So one of the officers came over to me and they were like, so where do you work at? Because they were like, this heifer doesn't work. So I gave them the name of where I worked at, the phone number, and my manager's name. And I was like, they'll tell you I work there. So you guys are not going to believe what they did. They called and told my manager that I was under arrest and I would not be in to work that day. Stop. Make it stop. Okay. So they fingerprinted me, of course, booked me, put me in a jail cell. And there were 4 other women in this cell. So I mean, it's not like we're already sentenced or anything. It's, I guess, waiting to be sentenced or something. I don't know. So, and they leave and they said that I'm going to be going in front of the judge in a few hours and, I can tell my story there or whatever. So I'm like, well, I'm not even sure at this point what story I would have to tell. I don't know anything about somebody getting in an altercation where they almost killed someone. So I'm like, okay, there's nothing I can do about it at this point. Of course, they had given me my one phone call, and I had called my best friend, and I was like, "You guys," I said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "I got arrested," and at first she laughed because anyone that knows me knows that would be the last thing that would happen to me. Okay, I'm like, okay. So she laughed, and I said, "No, I'm here at the jail." And she said, "For what?" And I said, "Well, this police officer stopped me. He asked me, I told her the whole thing, and she said that doesn't even make sense." And I said, well, you and I are the only two that seem to know that." So she was working at the time, but she had a type of job where this isn't funny, but she had a type of job where she was like driving trucks. I don't know how much information I should give, but she worked for that city. And so she would do parks and recreation. So she had to go from place to place. So she had some kind of leeway. And she was like, don't say anything. I'll be down there to get you. I was like, I don't even know if they're talking about bail or, I don't even know anything. And she said, don't worry, I'll come and get you. So while I was in the jail cell, was like 3 or 4 of the ladies there, and one of the ladies, I swear to God, you guys, like a TV thing. What are you in for? And I was like, I to this moment don't know. I changed my license plate, and I should have went to registration. And of course, the ladies all laughed at me because they were like, "You idiot." And unbeknownst to me, while that first officer was arresting me, handcuffing me on the street while cars are going by, a couple of my coworkers drove by and they saw me getting arrested. So before the police called my manager to say, she's being arrested, we already went through the whole office. Sherry got arrested. The cops were handcuffing her. She had to leave her car. I was like, oh shit. So I told my story to the ladies in there. This one lady said, ma'am, can I talk to you? And I said, sure. And she kind of scooted over on the bench and she said, I'm in here because I actually did do an attempted murder. And I'm thinking, are you the one they're looking for and not me? But no, I didn't. I'm just kidding. And I said, what? And she said, yes. She said, I have an abusive boyfriend and he just abused me one time too many. She said, and I grabbed a kitchen knife and I've stabbed him twice. She said, one in the chest and one in the stomach. He didn't die, but of course, that's still attempted murder. And she said she was really sorry about it, but she said, and then she did have bruises and stuff on her. So she said, it's not like I don't have like physical proof. And she said, I'm not really worried about anything, but you seem like a really nice person. I just wanted to talk with you and have you, give me some type of, advice or motivation or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, I actually do motivational speaking and inspirational speaking. And I sat with her and I talked to her and I told her, don't be too stressed out. And, the important thing would be that she could decide if she wanted to return to that relationship and continue being in a hot mess for the rest of her life, or if this was really going to be the last straw. He hurt you to a point where you almost killed him, and maybe the two of you need to agree, or at least one of you, which is you, need to agree that this isn't the type of relationship you want to continue in. She was like, you're right, you're right. I think I just needed someone to tell you that. And I was like, I'm sure you've had friends and family that have told you that. But for some reason, some of us don't value good advice that we get from people that we know. And a stranger will come along and say the same thing our mom has told us for 10 years. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, yeah, you're right. But, I didn't say all that to her. I'm just saying that in this whole thing. But anyway, so a couple of hours go by and I'm still going, this is crazy. Because my thing is, if I wasn't speeding, used my signals, following the traffic things, what would have made him pull me over? So that's the question that I wanted to ask because, and I don't know how true this is, we all hear they can't look this up and they can't do that. But someone had told me that if he were following behind me and just happened to run the plate and see that it didn't match the car, then that's probable cause. But someone else told me they can't just run your plate because they're behind you. They have to have a reason to have done that act. And so they were saying, you can sue and you can do this and you can do that. And I was like, I just want to get out of here. Okay. And I don't want a record, you know. So a couple hours pass. I go in front of this judge, and it's a female judge. And the city that I'm in at this time, it was years ago, but to protect the judges and security people and things like that, the judge will actually appear on a TV monitor. So she can see you and you can see her. And it's like high. So it's like you're looking up at a high court or something. But she came out and she looked at the paperwork that I guess they had processed within that few hours time. And then she looked at a picture of the person that was wanted. And then she looked at me and she looked at the picture again and looked at me and she said, that's not her, let her go. So of course everyone in the dang room was shocked. They were like, what the hell is she talking about? This police officer said, what do you mean? She said, whoever you picked up is not the lady that's wanted. This is not her. Let her go. Of course I'm happy. I'm thinking, okay, what happened here? So one of the officers, and I should say this judge was a African American female. So one of the officers turned to me. He said, "Do you know that judge? Is that why she's letting you off?" And I was like, I don't know any judges or any attorneys or anyone that's where I would need representation. I said, no, I don't know her. So they took me to this other room and I guess a commanding officer, they say it was the CO, so I'm thinking that means commanding officer, but I don't know these things, okay? And he came in and he said, Miss Brantley, I have to explain to you what occurred. He said, because it was a major error on our part. He said, there is someone with your name. Okay, I don't believe any of that, but okay. That's wanted. We have wanted three felonies or something like that that was wanted. He said, so when the officer stopped you and you have the same name, your plate didn't match. He thought the vehicle was stolen, because people who have felonies, they may steal vehicles. I don't know. And he said, so he did not want to take any chances. And that's the reason why you were arrested in the manner that you were. And he said, and I know a lot of people think that for routine, traffic stops, we, normally wouldn't brandish our weapon. He said, but if we think our lives may be in danger, he said, our goal is to make it home safe. So I think he was trying to say, just look at it from our point of view. And I have to be honest with you guys. The officer that arrested me was African American, so it was an African American male. So it wasn't any of that driving while black or anything like that. He took my information, thought I was the one they were looking for, and maybe I don't know what she looked like, but that judge looked at that one picture and she looked at me and she's like, "That's not her." So I told him that there were no hard feelings. That I had a friend that was on her way to come pick me up, and we kind of shook hands. And the officer that had arrested me was standing outside of that conference room that we were in, or wherever room we were in. And then he came up and he apologized as well. And he said, I'm really sorry. And, um, it was a major mistake. And, I don't know what else to say. And if you guys have watched any of my other vehicles, any of my other videos, you know that for me, and again, this is just for me. Not negating what someone else may do or think. I saw that as just an error. Now, of course, I didn't like having a gun brandished pointed at me, but I was like, I get it. If you're thinking you're with someone that has a three felony arrest warrants out on them, you don't know what they may do. You think the car's not mine, the plate didn't match. I mean, really, can you? I mean, just look at it at that point. So, I did tell them that there were no hard feelings, that they would not hear from me. I'm not going to run and get a lawyer and say, this is what they did. I was like, it is what it is. And, but I told them, I said, but to call my job and say, I'm being arrested, really? Did that have to happen? Jeez. So, because now I got to explain to them, you know, this whole debacle. But anyway, my friend got there, and of course, I didn't have any bail or anything. And they told me that them fingerprinting me and booking me and everything would be, I don't want to say expunged, because that's usually after you've been charged or something, but it would be like null and void. And she came there and she was like, I cannot believe my girl got arrested. ah, I'm like, shut the hell up. And so I mean, she was highly upset though. She was mad as hell. And then remember, my car was still in the other township because that's where he had stopped me at. So she told me she would take me, to where my car was at, and that way I could, get back into it. So get to work. Everybody where I worked at, there's like glass all around because I worked at a. I'm not going to tell you where I worked at, but everyone could see me. Excuse me, as I'm, pulling up in my new car. Yeah. And so I walk in, in order to get to where my desk was at, I had to walk in the front door, and then you have a lobby and other people are kind of standing around. And then you walk maybe 6, 12, 18, about 20, 24 feet to the receptionist desk. And I get to the receptionist. And, again, in this time of my life, everyone knew me. They knew my character. They knew me. I'm a good worker. They know I'm volunteer. All the good things. So she said, and this was a receptionist that knew me well. So she was like, and she was one of those no nonsense ones. Okay, she was like, Miss Brantley, so and so came in here talking about he saw you getting arrested and everything, and you must have really did something bad because they were handcuffing you. And I told him to shut the hell up. I said he didn't know what he was talking about, and it's a mistake. I told him, I said that's a mistake. You watch, he'll come in here today. And so while she's saying all of that, the guy who had ran in to tell him he saw me was standing there, and I don't blame him. I mean, if I saw one of my colleagues getting arrested on the way to work, I think I would at least mention it to one or two people. I'd be like, I saw so and so getting arrested. I'm I'm not going to not say anything. So I wasn't mad at him either. I was like, well, he wasn't lying, right? He saw me getting arrested and being handcuffed, put in the car. I mean, he didn't see all that, but he did see me getting handcuffed. So I was like, oh, okay. But I told her, I said, no, don't be mad at him or anything. I said, he just reported on what he saw. She said, well, he didn't have to report it. I said, that's true, but come on, wouldn't we have done the same damn thing? So by this time, the manager of the place came out and asked me to come into the office, and I explained to him what had happened and everything. And he kind of chuckled. He was like, well, we knew it wasn't anything, you know, detrimental because it's you. So that's what happened with that. And as you guys know, am very, I've tried to make sure that if we're in a situation that can turn out to be an altercation or a conflict or anything like that, my first thing is to let my peacemaking skills kick in and communication skills so that way things don't flare up and get out of hand and really get out of control. So um, that was a very interesting event. And now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder did they really expunge that record, or do I have somewhere out in the universe some time that shows that I was arrested for whatever? So anyway, that's the tale that I wanted to tell on that. I wanted to ask any of you guys. I'm not talking about the Bonnie and Clyde ones on here, okay? But we know that's none of you guys because we're here to learn lessons. Have you ever had an unexpected routine traffic stop that kind of went south or could have gone south, and what you did to prevent that, or what someone else may have done to assist you to prevent that, or if it were prevented, maybe things did get out of hand. So please like, share, and please subscribe. I'm trying to build up my subscriber base right now, so I had no idea how important that was here on YouTube, but evidently it is. And I thank you. And for all of you who have left comments on my previous videos, I truly, genuinely appreciate that. So I wanted to say that up front. If you notice, I always respond to you guys. And of course, my naysayers are like, you're not going to always be able to respond to everyone. I was like, well, I can, I will. Okay. So thank you. I will see you on the next turn. Bye.